protocol labs ecosystem. We have touch points here as well. Happy to go further into the details. But I also found the background of all the speakers very interesting. All of us, we have worked actually in pretty big Web2 tech giants companies, right? With your career as that, I mean, the last 15 years you spent at Google, IBM, like all these big names, Amelia, several startups, but also Salesforce, bigger tech startup. And Marvin, you also, of course, work for tech giants in Asia like Didi. I also have some history in Google, so I think it's very nice that we all have this common interest, or in the past, and now we are building all on the Web3 cloud area area in the Web3 space. So very excited also to hear a bit why you guys actually decided to join or make this move. But overall, we want to really also tap into the topic Web3 cloud. Why is it specific? Where are we? And what are some trends that we are focusing on? I think to get it started and also get the audience a bit more familiar specifically with Bundler and Bacalhau specifically, I would like to ask you guys, what are specific use cases on your cloud, and specifically also the difference between here cloud computing and cloud storage, right? Amelia, you're mainly focusing on the storage side. If you would like to start to explain what use cases you're actually focusing on, using the Bundler network, which is based on Aviv.
Can you guys hear me? I was frozen for a little bit.
Yeah, I think you're back.
Good. All right. Sounds good. Well, yeah, thanks again for having me on the event today. Really excited to have a discussion with everyone. So for those of you who don't know what Bundler is a decentralized data network that's really focused on helping developers solve for the data integrity challenges that we're faced with today. Zoe, you mentioned that I had the opportunity to work at Salesforce. I also worked at Snowflake. And one of the big issues that we constantly run into when we were speaking to customers is this idea of data integrity. And there's a ton of different tools out there that can help sort of clean up your data and like make sure that it sort of meets the standards of knowing whether or not it's true. However, it never really gets down to the foundational issue, which is the reality is that data can be manipulated or altered because it is not permanently stored and there's no sort of transparency around it. So that's really a big opportunity, especially within the decentralized space, for us to solve for that issue by creating sort of this data foundation. And our vision at Bundler is to essentially create like a data layer, which is the trustless source of truth. Now, I want to be very clear. We're not claiming whether or not something is true or not. However, we are saying that you can believe that this piece of information was done by this person at a very specific time and point, and know that that's true because it's been stored permanently on Arweave, which is part of our stack. So we really break down our focus into sort of like 3 different solutions, which is like a crawl, walk, run approach. And it's really meant to sort of meet the different needs depending on where you are in your Web3 data journey. First and foremost, which is just like storing your data in a decentralized manner, which is what Bundler is very well known for. So being able to use decentralized data storage in a performance scalable way, like we would expect in our like predecessors in the cloud side of things. And then we start getting into this concept of like proof of provenance, which is not something that previous providers were able to solve for. So like really getting down to the granularity of what I was saying, like timestamping, knowing when someone did something at a very specific time. And then we're also starting getting into this concept of optimized data availability, which I'm not going to speak to too much today, but it is something that we're leaning into. But yeah, again, we're really focused on being able to help users wherever they are in their data journey, and making sure that they can start decentralizing. So, yeah.
Thank you for sharing, Amelia. I mean, it's we have not, or we are in conversation, right, to use Bundler also for Phala Network specifically. At the moment, we are working with Arif directly, but I think you guys are solving a very big problem, right? Like scalability. It can always be a problem, a hindrance, and I think it's very, very cool that you guys really focusing on this, and are one big part of the Arif ecosystem here. So yeah, excited about the whole journey as well. I know that you guys have a lot of cool upcoming things on the roadmap. Maybe you can share on this later on as well. But we'd love to hear from Wes as well. Wes, so from the DCloud perspective, if you like to introduce the project as well. It is quite a new project, right, in the Filecoin or Protocol Labs ecosystem. Mainly focusing on the computation, right? Again, like Bundler is for the storage mainly. Now we have like the computation part of cloud. Please give us some background here.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for having us. It's really an honor to join the session. The DCloud project is the first project out of Protocol Labs to bring decentralized compute over the existing data ecosystems. Protocol Labs has invested a lot of time and energy in growing the IPFS and Filecoin storage networks. Those networks were trying to bring immutable storage for use cases related to Web3 broadly. Decentralized finance, NFTs were popular for IPFS. And then the Filecoin ecosystem is going for longer term storage for research, for nonprofits, and even now more so for enterprise. The DCloud project is the first project that's trying to bring compute, like Dockerized workloads, any type of job that can be wrapped in a Docker container and sent to where that data lives. If those data sets are very large, it's hard to move the data. It's expensive to move the data. So we're trying to bring compute over the data, or COD, or COD, like codfish. And so the joke is that the Portuguese word for salted codfish is bacalhau. And we have some Portuguese folks in the leadership. So we've tried to piggyback on those problems that the storage layers are trying to solve. We've found some good alignment with the decentralized science community. So we just got back from DCloud London, and we spent a lot of time with those folks. And so we're just kind of continuing to grow in the Web3 and research communities to find areas that we can add help, particularly for batch style compute workloads.
Cool. Yeah, very, very interesting on these use cases. Decentralized science, I think, definitely makes sense, right? For cloud computation, we need big data sets. You're working on very interesting use cases here. Thanks also for giving this background on the name, where this cool name is coming from. Always funny to hear these stories. Marvin, from your perspective, I guess we have a big Phala following community here today, but if you want to summarize maybe on what kind of use cases we are working on right now. Also for everyone, Phala as decentralized cloud, similar to what DCloud is doing, is like the computation side, but also mainly focusing on the CPU. So Marvin, over to you if you want to give an update on what's going on in Phala.
Yeah, thank you, Zoe. So when people are talking about the computation, a general, like misguidance is people raise the imagination with more like stateless computation jobs, such as science computation, or rendering. But besides these kind of computation job, I think Phala is very focused on providing the computation jobs with state, which means to run programs, with a lot of state. And our target now is to extension, the trusted list from on-chain into off-chain to make sure the Web3 developers can almost build, any impossible decentralized applications into the world. We can always hear out the devs talking about, okay, based on the current L1 structure or based on EVM, I can't do this, I can't do that. But we kind of want to free them, their innovation ideas to do whatever they want. So two problems will be solved in Phala off-chain computation solutions. The first one is then you can integrate any HTTP requested data flow from external Web2 world into Web3 world, and we can make transform the APIs into oracles so that every data flow will happening on chain. But the second problem we want to solve is to provide a stronger environment for these off-chain execution programs. Why don't we build it on smart contract? Our series, like smart contract, is always the trust base, the whole Web3 world. So whatever developers want to deliver, if they can build a smart contracts based programs, they need to do it. We want them to do so. But if they're facing some problem, like I want to interact with another chain, I want to interact with Twitter, the Web2 world, or I want to run a very big program that cannot be executed by subscription type of smart contract. We want to provide a better environment for these executions in option, and this is where Phala is coming from. But of course, in the meanwhile, we keep everything decentralized. We keep everything as trustless as possible. For example, the programs are verified on-chain but executed in off-chain. So based on that idea, in last year we deliver a production based on top of Phala the computation network, which is called Fat Contract. Is pretty like a solution to deal with such use cases. But first, coming up use cases, I think we covered the automation use case for DeFi, right? We also got NFT marketplace and NFT minting programs, which is called Phala World. So yeah, more and more different type of use cases is coming up. But I think in the next 12 months, we'll be very focused on Web3 native use cases. That's what we are focused on. Thank you.
Thank you, Marvin. Exciting to hear again for everyone also that's new maybe to Phala Network. The special approach that we are taking here is really in the computation side, that we use the on-chain and the off-chain part, right? We have everything like or most of the computation also run off-chain, which provides a lot of benefits. I think we can have a whole session on the whole deep technology. Today we want to keep it a bit more high level for everyone to follow on the overall topic. But maybe going back to Wes, there was just a question in the chat. I think you touched on it, the use cases, but if you want to maybe elaborate a bit more on use cases for Bacalhau, just that we have this question answered here.
Most definitely. Yeah, there's just in addition to the ones that we mentioned, there's a lot of desire to take processes that may have had to happen with public cloud providers today. I think even, chatting with Marvin and Amelia, a lot of our interests are saying that there's compute workloads, both batch and interactive things, that people have to go to AWS or Google or Microsoft and use a centralized provider. And so even in the Web3 space, we talked to folks like one example was the Gitcoin quadratic funding rounds, where those need to happen today in an off-chain system because it's heavy compute. You can't necessarily do that on-chain. And if we can make it verifiable and more public, any of these Web3 projects, it could be more valuable to their end users by bringing it on-chain. And so that's one dimension. The other aspect that we're very interested in is this decentralized AI space. And so at docs.bacalhau.org, we have a whole section for inference and stable diffusion generation. It's fun, it's artistic, but we also think that there's some value there longer term in terms of just enabling all the fun things that are going on with ChatGPT and the AI community. And so we're actually in a sort of a testnet phase right now, or a beta, and we welcome folks to jump onto the website to start using it. There's no sign up needed, so it's absolutely available, and we welcome folks' feedback.
Cool. Thanks on elaborating on this, which leads me actually to the next question, where we wanted to dive more to understand the state, right, currently on decentralized cloud services, and why. Two questions to this from this perspective, because if we look into Web3 applications, yeah, they use blockchain, they are decentralized, but there's often a part in the architecture where they're still using AWS, Google Cloud, like centralized cloud services for the computation. Sometimes also for the storage, but I think the storage is more advanced in the Web3 backend than the computation itself. So I would like to maybe, Marvin, you want to take this one and say, from your perspective, first of all, why people are just using these components, or how we are approaching this to actually make them move over to the decentralized service, because this is exactly the missing part, I would say, to make a whole application completely decentralized, right? So yeah, what's your take on this, Marvin?
Yeah, thank you. So well, I think there are several concepts I want to bring before the topic. The first concept is the blockchain we are talking about every day. It's kind of the you can imagine it as the strongest trustless machine in the world that you can, it's just so permissionless and trustless, and every node verified every execution on top of it, so you can trust it with no trust, right? So this is where smart contract is running on, most of the smart contract, but there are a lot of specialized chains, or we can call them as Web3 infrastructure, that they are blockchains, but it's unlike the Ethereum, Polygon, or other blockchains. These specialized blockchains is existing to provide rich services besides smart contract. So, for example, like Filecoin, Aave, or a Bonder, Phala. These, of course, there are the Graph protocol, Chainlink. These infras are providing also decentralized service, but when people are talking about blockchain, they don't bring the imagination together, bring the concepts together. So in my conversation, I will call these infras as Web3 infra. They are also decentralized. They are also guaranteed by tons of nodes verification all the time. But yeah, it's not providing the traditional smart contract services. And so the question is basically asking, why do we having these very decent Web3 infras as blockchain? So the reason is because if you want to deliver the complex service or applications to consumer, and smart contract is just part of the job. What smart contract can do is to provide the core logic of the business. So, for example, when you're using Uniswap, right, you swipe token A into token B. The swipe itself is execution in the program which we call Uniswap v3 running on Ethereum. So the smart contract can deal with these kind of programming workflow. But besides that, consumer also need to have an interact with the interface. They need the UI. They want to provide data insights, right? So if you click out Uniswap, you can also see there's a data analytics board providing to all of the consumers. So it means that Uniswap also need to index the data from on-chain directly. So building a decentralized application, smart contract is part of the job. What we also need is a permanent data storage layer. We also need a data availability layer, right, to read data from on-chain or outside the world, like oracles. So there are a lot of things. There are a lot of stacks required for developer to build a fully decentralized application. I think this is the reason why we need to have specialized services or specialized decentralized stacks there to these steps. So I hope this can answer the first question. But I want to talk more about motivation, right? So just imagine if Uniswap team already running the business on smart contract with permissionless, why do they even want to use decentralized front end? Why do they even want to use the Graph protocol to indexing data as Uniswap analytics? That's the core reason for specialized chain teams. I think the reason is because the more decentralized or the more trustless you can get, the more potential commercial level innovation you can get. So if you check out how Uniswap or the most popular smart contract is getting popular, you will see the trustless is actually building trustless is the fundamental to build up new innovation ideas. So the formula behind Uniswap already existing for 30 years, right? The AMM formula. So it's already been there for 30 years. Why don't have anyone build it in internet age? It's because they can't. Only with Ethereum, they provide an environment for smart guys to build something like Uniswap using the AMM theory. So trustless infra is the backbone, to provide new innovation ideas. So this is why the Web3 developers want to expand trustless as much as possible. We want to use the Graph protocol to indexing data, cut off the middleman from Amazon cloud. We want to use, Filecoin or Aave to storage data, so that I can't even imagine how many millions different type of new applications coming up in the future for Web3. So I think the innovation base is the key answer for the motivation.
Amazing, beautiful. Yeah, you said it's very, very beautiful. Trustless infra is the backbone to create new innovation in Web3, right? I love this. Wes, do you want to add anything from your perspective to what Marvin just said?
I completely agree with Marvin's point, and it's funny how much the trustlessness sometimes goes in and out of fashion during the bull and bear markets. Mm-hmm. I was having conversations with architects and technology leaders at some of the larger DeFi order routing protocols earlier this year in January, February, and asking them how important is decentralized compute for you? Obviously, they have to use certain backends, sitting in AWS. How does this rank in your priorities? And many of them were saying that philosophically they want it, but their users were not asking for it yet at the time. Partly, every price is going up. It's just everybody's moving. But then you see sort of after all the issues that we had with FTX and all the trust was compromised with a lot of, certainly not decentralized finance, but let's say the space of crypto more broadly, and it's certainly centralized finance, maybe even to some extent trust with protocols like Terra and Luna. People start to care about trust again. And so I think what Marvin's point is, trust becomes a critical infrastructure for the next generation that we're building. And that's certainly a big focus for our project as well, is how much verification to enable. I think the Phala network with the secure enclaves is a lovely approach from an architecture perspective to enable that verification between on-chain and off-chain. I think it's going to become more fashionable. I think it's become an important part of everything that folks are building.
Great. Yeah, very interesting that you asked this question directly, right? I mean, this is how we get to know our users, right? How important is decentralized storage or decentralized compute for you? Thank you for giving these insights. Amelia, from your perspective, because again, right, Wes and Marvin are talking more from the compute side. You guys are really, I mean, as of now, focusing on the storage of data in like as a cloud protocol. How would you say, because we just talked about the architecture, the components, how would you say compute and storage comes together? Like, does it need to come from like when you want to decentralize your application, should it come from like as one component, or you think, okay, you decentralize on the storage side first, and then you go also on the computation to actually host it in a decentralized way? Maybe you talk from your perspective. What are your plans? How do you see this from Bundler perspective as well?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I'm going to answer with a non-answer because it's really dependent on the user needs, frankly. So there's not really a blanket answer for this type of question. One thing that, I mean, Bundler is really focused on right now is the storage aspect. So we're not focused on compute at the moment, nor is it really what we're going to lean into based off of what we're hearing from our user needs. We do believe in decentralization at Bundler and think that that is the direction that most users should go in. But there are situations where it's not ideal for that user at that specific time. But ultimately, that is where everyone is going to be going. For Bundler, for instance, like we inherit all of the decentralization of Arweave, which is our underlying technology, but we're not fully decentralized today. That is part of our roadmap, but it doesn't mean that users can't use us today. I will say that it is a high priority ask for a lot of our top users is to be decentralized. So we're actually seeing a lot more demand on the storage side for decentralization. And because compute's not something that we particularly focus on, we usually look to partner with folks such as yourself to bring that into those conversations with users. So yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. I would like to follow up on a question here from the audience. It fits right now. And Amelia, if you want to follow up on this directly, if we go more into the security aspect. So how can Bundler actually secure or securely store data? Because you also just mentioned you're not completely decentralized yet as of now. So maybe this question comes up. Yeah. Can you elaborate on this, please?
Yeah, I mean, security is a top focus for us. We're lucky because we inherit the security from Arweave. As many people know, Arweave is incredibly secure, censorship resistant, and decentralized. And where Bundler came in was really meant to be like an access point. Masari wrote a really great report a few weeks ago or a few months ago, discussing how Bundler really solved for the accessibility of being able to store on Arweave. Because when you're thinking about the trifecta of decentralization, security, and scale, Arweave was great at decentralization and security, wasn't able to scale. That being said, when we're building out our decentralized sort of network, we're really focusing in on the security aspect because no matter whether you're in Web3 or Web2, security is a huge concern, especially if you're looking at large enterprises who deal with incredibly sensitive user data. At default, data is not encrypted when you're storing using Bundler. However, you do have the ability to encrypt it. There's also other great tools within the Arweave ecosystem, like Accord, that is very much focused on creating sort of these privacy rooms when you're exchanging data that is highly sensitive. So what's great, again, kind of going back to the factor of collaborating with other folks who are really focused on some of these big problems, that's something that we lean into in addition to some of the things that we're working on. Having worked in Web2 before, I will say that the decentralized nature of Arweave is some of the most secure that I've personally ever seen. So I think that everyone can feel fairly confident in the fact that if something were to ever to happen at Arweave, their data is still going to be secure and they have the ability to encrypt that, which is pretty impressive. So I think that there's an opportunity, though, to make it a little bit more user-friendly and to do a little bit of abstraction on the Web3 side so that we're creating tools that are easier for onboarding some of our Web2 developers into Web3 so that they can easily create private information without having to deal with some of the inherent nature of crypto, which is not always the easiest, as we know.
Very true, very true. Thanks for elaborating on this. Marvin, can you give some background on how Phala tackles this issue, please, on privacy and security?
Sure. I mean, the reason why we are here is because in the very beginning of Phala, we want most of the Phala community members know that we are using a technology called SGX to provide a privacy enhanced function to encrypt the program's execution results happening in the off-chain. But using hardware solutions also involved more problems, and there are also a lot of people worried about this. Like, what if SGX got leaked? What if SGX got hacked? But before that, I think there's some concept that maybe can be helpful to understand the security level of Phala. So first of all, we don't rely on any hardwares to guarantee the execution results already happening. So the security level of Phala network is guaranteed backing by Polkadot. So that's why we're using Polkadot as layer 0. So we win the slot auction, and Phala is running as a parachute on Polkadot. So Polkadot, as layer 0 relation, is providing all of the nodes verification jobs for Phala. So our token price, TVL or SGX doesn't influence anything happened on the Phala blockchain itself. But in another hand, we have two layers, right? Phala, the layer 1 is running as a parachain, and the off-chain computation cloud is running as the layer 2. So this is a more complex infrastructure, but thanks to that, everything verified or guaranteed on-chain, which can very hard to be changed. So and instead of privacy solution, Phala is majorly using SGX to provide computation requests to build a more general roll-up layer fit with the backend program. So although we are using SGX, but Phala network itself is the security technology we are using for this backend program. SGX is not the technology. So you can imagine there is a box running the program, and SGX is more like we are adding up an iron box outside of this, this program box. So this is what is actually happening. So SGX to us is more like an enhanced technology. It's not the core technology we are using. And we are kind of, if you compared with the Web3 solutions that are using SGX already, I believe Phala is one of the best secured solution among all solutions already, because as mentioned, we got two layers, and we distributed different tasks to the target confidential level hardwares, which make the attackers very hard to find the executor nodes. So separate the off-chain computation nodes into different security levels is kind of an innovation and contribution made by Phala. And another thing is kind of actual shield to ensure these computers have stronger motivation to protect the security. For example, the ZKP or MPC technology Web3 solutions are also using tokenomic game theory based tokenomic to make sure the parties are on the same page. This is why we have a token. So yeah, Phala tokenomic is another actual shield. And I think we are also based on a more solid cryptographic system that SGX have better damage control from SGX attacking, because Phala is upgradable we can always make sure Phala be more secure in the future by integrating new technologies such as MPC into Phala there. So Phala is not a SGX and blockchain network. It's something stronger than that.
Yeah. More than that. Great. Thanks, Marvin. Wes, from your perspective also, if you want to just mention a bit on how you tackled a security question for Bacalhau specifically.
Yes, the use cases that we're interested in that do care about security include things like we'd like to help address more healthcare related use cases where there might be PII involved. So being able to do compute over encrypted data sets is something that we're spending a lot of time on. We're also trying to use secure enclaves in a similar way that Phala network is using. We've tried to do some integrations with things like Ocean DAO, which sort of allow tokenization of data sets or token ownership of data. And if someone owns a private data set, they want to be able to compute over that private data set without letting that data set, be made public. Then there's some use cases that we want to serve where verification and security are either difficult to do or they just aren't worth the value. For example, if you're trying to generate NFTs of fun cat images, those sorts of users may not care as much about verification and security. So we want to enable, not having the overhead of processing and cost of those. There are then some use cases where verification and security are extremely important. So hopefully we'll be able to enable a bit of a range for the variety of problems that we're trying to solve.
Good, thank you. Irina asked you, does Bacalhau supports TE? I think you just mentioned it, right? You looked into it, secure enclaves / trusted execution environments. As of now, I think the full support is not there yet, but maybe on the roadmap. Phala does support or has secure enclaves integrated in the infrastructure as of now. Wes, I would like to hear from you a bit more because you have this quite long experience in the cloud space itself in Web2 also. I think this is very interesting. And now, you have your career in the Web3 space. But from your perspective, what kind of trends have you seen so far in the cloud space? Also, maybe compared to Web2 in Web3, and where do you think we are going from where we are right now in the Web3 cloud space? It could be storage related, but also compute related. Would like to hear what you think.
Yes, no, it was fun because I was fortunate to see sort of in the middle of all the action where a lot of the traditional enterprise and Web2 properties were moving from heavy on-prem utilization to cloud utilization. The on-prem world, physical infrastructure required capital upfront costs, and it was difficult for businesses to spread that cost over the different lines of business and where the costs were being incurred. The cloud was much more flexible. They could spin up and spin down resources. So there was just an immense amount of movement to that area. And I think that served enterprises well. Enterprises need central authorities, they need trust and all these sorts of things. But sort of in a different lens in Web3, we're all sort of building this in trustlessness. I don't want the person to have to trust that I'm running the server. I want them to be able to verify it publicly. And what I think is interesting is in the traditional Web2 world, you have organizations like Amazon and you have immense trust for them. You pay for that trust. There's a premium on top of that trust. And so in this new world with networks like Phala and people that are going to build compute and the other networks is not to borrow too much from Amelia's organization name, but it's sort of an unbundling of that trust in the sense that maybe I have different degrees of trust. Maybe I don't want to have to trust 100% of Amazon. Maybe my workloads, maybe I want to run computation over the Phala network because I trust the people that are running compute nodes and worker nodes within the Phala network. And so it's almost like people talk about the unbundling of Craigslist turned into Airbnb and all these other fun companies. Well, I think there's a bit of an unbundling in centralized compute as well. And there were all these criticisms last year with the folks like Moxie Marlinspike saying that Web3 is just DeFi and JPEGs. But to Marvin's point, I think that now that you were building all these different types of infrastructure for Web3, there's these use cases around decentralized social media and decentralized video streaming. And so I think we're going to start to see all these fun new use cases come into being because all these teams like Phala are building these really robust alternatives for infrastructure.
Cool. Thanks for sharing your insights there. Amelia, from your perspective, maybe also more from the storage side, because as I said in the beginning, the decentralized storage has more adoption in the Web3 space or Web2 space already than the computation. Where do you see it going?
Yeah, I mean, we're really lucky because we're getting a lot of interest from the Web2 space in some of the concepts I had mentioned at the beginning. So this idea of proof of provenance and optimistic data availability. I think specifically proof of provenance is like a little bit easier to digest, specifically for the Web2 folks. But I mean, one of the use cases that we're seeing specifically like within the social and content management piece is like being able to, and even research actually to Wes's point, like being able to tie back credit to where it's deserved, especially for creators or researchers. And I think that's going to become more and more prevalent, and being able to guarantee that without some of the like heavy systems that we've seen in the past before. So like heavy consensus mechanisms. So there's really this like idea of stateful versus stateless that we're leaning into as well. More to come on that. We're writing a few pieces that sort of get into these newer concepts in detail. But it has been a like huge topic of conversation for a number of the Web2 players who are looking to sort of solve for some of these things. And I'll say that decentralized solutions are much better positioned to be able to do that compared to some of our cloud players. And I don't think there's a world like in the immediate future where that completely disappears. Like there's might be some opportunities where we can collaborate with our centralized friends. But it's really leaning into like, where do we incrementally add value? And I think it's, again, in getting back to the fact that, at least specifically on the bundler and like Arweave side, is the censorship resistance. And with bundler, you're able to create these we're calling them high resolution timestamps, which essentially means like getting down to a very granular level of when something happened. Because for some of them more traditional blockchains, you can only see it at the block level, which is not as accurate as many people would like to see. So that's some of the use cases that we're hearing a lot more interest, and I just think we're so well positioned to be able to solve for that. I can't share who the Web2 players who are interested, Irene. I appreciate you asking, but we're under NDA for the majority of those conversations. But I'm sure you saw Meta and Arweave did announce a partnership back in, when was that? I think it was in the summertime or in the fall, October timeline. So you can imagine some of those peers are probably also interested in similar use cases without giving away names.
Very exciting. Wow. Okay. So yeah, everyone should follow the next upcoming announcement from Bundler Network. Stay tuned. This sounds very cool. Yeah, and as you said, you know, it's like the partnerships in the Web2 app, but also in the Web3 space itself. Let's go more into adoption, right? I mean, we talked about the trends, but like, how can we actually make these trends, let's say, happen or actually possible? I would like to hear from Marvin specifically to say, okay, what can we do better to get into, to make Web3 cloud, again, from storage, from computation side, more available, for Web3 developers, but also, of course, make it available for and understandable for Web2 developers, and also necessary. How does this tie with mass adoption? What can we do? What does Phala do already to reach this goal?
Yeah, thank you. I think I can go with the second point of view, which like what we can do to make the Web2 developers begin to use Web3 infra. I think the answer is it just will happen naturally as the time passed by, and younger generations, they prefer crypto and Web3 building applications. And all of the developers are actually building some business, right? Delivering some ideas, and they're always going after with the consumer preference. So let's say if the consumers prefer to use Web3 app or D app, there will be more and more developers begin to pick up, Web3 stacks and begin to build something on top of it. I have no doubt that will happen. It's just one, right? As we looking back, forward in the past 10 years, every 2 years, there will be there will be a new traditional technology business begin to using Web3 technology more and more deeper. So I think, the next one could be AI, it could be Facebook, could be Meta, I don't know, but it just will come. So I have no doubts that developers will move into Web3 because the consumer will move it from Web2 world into here. But the more emergency question to as Web3 infra builder is how we can get adopted with a Web3 use case. So to answer this question, if we look into what's happening in the world now, right? So as Wes just mentioned, after the FTX and 3AC crash, people begin to lose trust to deposit their money into centralized institutions. So that's kind of give DeFi a new value add up. Consumer, even though DeFi could be harder to use, even though CeFi have better experience, but if you're so just $100K, you always want to use a more trusted party instead of trusting some person, right? So I think DeFi will make the success in longer term. So DeFi, NFT, Metaverse, these are the most, and of course, decentralized money. They will be always, these kind of use case already been proved as long-term valuable Web3 use cases. So I think the Web3 cloud already targeted on that perspective. For example, most of the NFTs are beginning to choose either storage on Filecoin by IPFS or storage on Rwave as permanent storage. For example, Phala World NFT storage on Rwave. So the use case is already coming up, and I think this is how we get adopted to the Web3 world, that we provide the services this use case need. For example, I think in a DeFi scenario, oracles and off-chain API transfer is kind of coming up technology or solution Web3 devs need. Automation is very popular, right? So if you check out Pancake order book swipe, is providing by automation tooling called Gelato. So I mean, these are all kind of the Web3 native use cases that could be very adopted with a Web3 cloud. And there's one more thing, which is as Ethereum already transferred from proof of work into proof of stake, more and more infras are using nodes to operate their like proof of stake algorithm, and this gives a lot of cloud infrastructure a big opportunity to provide such service, which we call node as service. And as far as I know, Anchor Network and I think Kami, right, network, they're providing such infra to proof of stake node as service. And although I personally think it will be very hard to operate a totally decentralized computation network by providing such service. But I think, this is also a very big market for Web3 clouds. So that is my thoughts. Thanks.
Thank you, Marvin. This was a lot of insights on how to tackle mass adoption here. Wes, what is your take? How is the Bacalhau team approaching this? What are you guys doing, or where do you think is the need to get decentralized cloud to the mass adoption?
Yes, so we've done our best to meet the existing users where they are. So, for example, in the research space, we were at an event, an AGU fall event. It's the largest collection of Earth and atmospheric scientists in the US, meeting with traditional researchers, telling them about decentralized science and trying to meet them, kind of, bringing them from that perspective. We'll be doing more this year, focusing on Web2 developers, enterprise developers, and sort of going to conferences, having activities and events that are focused for those folks. Also, I think it's helpful. One of the things that a lot of these decentralized projects are doing well is building the technology interfaces that are familiar for Web2 developers. So, Web2 developers are using AWS, they're using to the Vercel and these sorts of things to spin up quick backends. And as much as we can do to try to meet them in the languages that they're familiar using and the technology, so that it's a very low friction movement for them to come to decentralized technologies, is extremely important. The Bacalhau network is Docker first, Docker and WASM binary first. So a lot of folks that are using any kind of Python workloads that can be easily bundled into a Dockerized container workload can run on Bacalhau network. And so making the transition process seamless as possible is one of our big focuses for this year.
Cool. This sounds very good. Yeah, this is a very smart approach, as you just explained. The other approach, like to make things as similar as in the Web2 space, Marvin mentioned Fed contract, right? We position it as a decentralized Lambda, right? AWS Lambda version is like a component that's used a lot to spin up serverless functions, or it is a serverless function to spin up your infrastructure actually in a serverless way. So we are also seeing, of course, this approach here. But yeah, there are a lot of details, like is Docker available, like how do you actually deploy and so on. So these questions come up, and we learn, of course, from these customer conversations as well. But in the end, we want to bring our technology to the mass, right? And that's why we have to develop these tools to make it usable for everyone. Yeah, very interesting. Thank you for sharing these insights. We are coming to an end of our online session here, but to get maybe a bit more again into the visionary side, and I know, Amelia, you have also a great passion for data management. I would like to, data overall, of course, right? That's why we are all here. What is your vision for the let's say 3 to 5 years on data management overall? Where do you think we are going, and what we can do for data management overall?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think there are a lot of folks who are having discussions on just like standardization of how we are going to be managing data in the future. One of the cool things about Bundler is that you have the ability to put as many attributes as you'd like to the data, which I think could be a little bit overwhelming, but it's a great opportunity because it actually makes the searchability of that data a lot easier and more granular. But with these like enhanced capabilities, we need some sort of standardization just so that we aren't sort of all doing things differently. So I'd love to see sort of more groups like us come together and start discussing like what are some best practices for our users so that we could provide some sort of guidance. I don't know if it should be like steadfast rules and whatnot, but at least providing the guidance so that they have the best practices to be successful as they make their transition into some of these new and innovative like edge use cases that we're ultimately going to be getting into, because similar to how technology has evolved over time, when you're starting and like blazing a trail for something new, there's always a lot of questions that need to be answered. And because we are sort of blazing the trail and leading the pack, I do think it's partially our responsibility to some point to come up with some of those like best practices and standardizations.
Nice. yeah, let's do a next session on what would we like to see as standardization. I think we can discuss this much further. Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, Marvin, what's your thought on this?
Well, to be honestly, I don't have a lot of ideas on that perspective. Like, what would be the paradigm for data management in Web3 in the future? But I think the on-chain data will always be the like top priority data storage layer. It's just too limited resources with too many requests. So we have to have layer 2s and specialized data storage layers and specialized computation layers. So if I got enough money, I want to storage every of my users' data on Ethereum, but I don't have the resources to do so. That's the reason, right? So I guess after 3 years, most of the Web3 applications and services, they will keep the core, how to say, the most important logics storage in a smart contract on Ethereum or layer 1s, but because we will definitely see more and more complex level of applications happening in Web3, such as Lens. There are over 100 different type of Lens applications coming up. So these social file related application, they will storage like much more data into Filecoin or Airwave. I have no doubt on that. So yeah, more prosper we got diversify of Web3 apps, we will see more and more usage for data storage layer like Filecoin and Airwave. In the meanwhile, I can also see the trends that data availability is becoming more and more popular, like the Graph protocol or something like that is coming up. And devs definitely want to customize their API rather than using the current oracles, because, for example, if you are using Chainlink, most of the oracles are already being customizing by the platform, not by yourself. But yeah, developer definitely need to customize their APIs, but the data availability infra behind the API should be something like a Web3 infra opportunity to provide rich service. Yeah, this is what I can see in 3 years.
Thank you. Yeah, very important point, data availability you mentioned as well. Yeah, I'm also very excited how everything plays together in the very near future in just stronger and much closer relationships here on all the different projects that you also just mentioned, Marvin. Wes, your take on this, your last thought, data management, data availability, where do you see this going in the future?
Well, it's I'm glad you guys are bringing this up, because that is also a big focus area for us, a big problem to be solved. Our existing users care about it. A lot of the folks that we want to serve as users care about it. One example is the groups at LabDAO want to do metagenomic pipelines. They want to be able to chain multiple jobs together. And there's a lot of need for lineage, for metadata around that. And so we are going to try to address that with a decentralized metadata store for the jobs. Why did the job run? Who ran the job? As sort of a first attempt at that. We would love to partner with more organizations to find sort of just a standard that we can all align with. Other organizations we work with, like DCloud, is very interested in metadata for what's referred to as fair data, findable, accessible, interoperable, reproducible, which is a academic standard that's becoming more popular for open data sets. So they care about metadata as well. I think we're going to have some hopefully some product offerings the next few months that can help address this. So in the short term, it's definitely a relevant problem. We care a lot about it. And, we're seeking more feedback along the way as we start to build out some early versions of solutions.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing on this as well. Yeah, I mean, definitely feedback is what we continuously need to receive, ask for to make all our solutions better and also more accessible for everyone. Great. Yeah, I think this was everything for this hour to discuss. We should definitely continue this conversation, maybe have another session on different topics. There's so many also, questions that came up. I hope we could answer at least some of the questions from the community. I apologize if there's still some open questions, but feel free to reach out to the speakers, or maybe we have some time to follow up on these questions. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining here today. For everyone that joined online, of course, Wes, Amelia, and Marvin, for giving your insights and sharing your knowledge. I'm very excited for this session and maybe for future sessions with you guys. Thank you so much. And I think then we're about to close.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Chloe and
Thank you.
Thank you. See you.